Hello everybody and welcome to tonight's webinar from Girls on Track UK, which is, as many of you know, managed by Motorsport UK. So thanks to everybody there involved in putting this event together as well. My name is Louise Goodman. I'm one of the FIA Girls on Track UK ambassadors. I'm also a motorsport presenter, so you'll find me at racetracks all around the UK covering the BTCC and in fact all around the world talking about Formula One. But tonight I'm home in not so sunny Oxfordshire. I'm very happy to be hosting this webinar where we're going to be focusing on a topic that's really high on everyone's agenda right now, and that's sustainability. Now, before I introduce our guests, I just need to run through a bit of housekeeping first of all, just to let you know that this webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to watch it back on the community Facebook page at a later date, as well as watching live today. I'm sure many of you have done, but in case you haven't been on one of these webinars previously, just to let you know that it'll just be myself and the guests doing the talking. However, that doesn't mean that you can't all join in, because you can use the chat function at the bottom of your screen to send us in your questions and your comments. So we've got three great guests for you this evening who all play an active role in sustainability in motorsport. Those are two words, sustainability and motorsport, that really used to be thought of as polar opposites. The two didn't go together. But in the past few years, the sport has really focused on changing both the way it works and also the technology that it uses to turn around and lead that change. In fact, motorsport, along with fashion, interestingly, was identified by the United Nations as a key industry to help address the climate emergency, both in terms of technology, but also spreading the word, because as you'll all know, and you're part of it, motorsport has a vast fan base. So our three speakers tonight have been right at the forefront of doing just that. So let's introduce them now. Ladies, if you'd like to turn your cameras on, it's a big welcome to Julia Pallet, who's Sustainability Director of the Formula E Championship, Dr. Cristiana Pace, another Girls on Track ambassador who also happens to be a leading engineer in this field, and motorsport brand and design expert Samantha Knight. Samantha works with all sorts of motorsport companies on their environmental and sustainability messages. So thanks to all of you for giving up your time and joining us. Now, we've had some great questions in already, so thanks to everybody who's sent one. Do keep them coming, and we're going to get as many of those questions to our guests as we can in the time that we have available. But before I dive in with the questions, perhaps I could ask each of our guests just to tell us a little bit about your background, your route into motorsport, and also what your work currently involves where sustainability is concerned. And Julia, maybe you'd like to kick us off.
Thank you very much, Louise. Thanks for having me, and hi virtually to everyone. I wish I could see you, but it's a pleasure to be there. A bit of my background, as you can hear, I'm French. My French accent can't lie. I've been studying sustainability at school. I did a business school, which is also quite interesting in the sense that it's not only kind of like the technical road that takes you to sustainability. And then I had the chance to do kind of like an internship and a first kind of like, a first work experience for a motorsport supplier, which is Michelin, the tire manufacturer, where I worked for a couple of years developing their sustainability strategy. And then I was hired by Formula E when it was the very beginning of this championship to do the same and develop their sustainability strategy. So this is now my role as sustainability director.
That's like a very big role.
Exactly, absolutely.
Sam, what's your story?
Hi there, everyone. Pleasure to be here. So my story is, well, I graduated in 2009 and I graduated in the recession. So I was thinking about, what to do off the back of that, really. And I basically wrote down on a piece of paper all the things that I really loved and I was really interested in. And motorsport had always been a passion of mine for many, many years. And I was really lucky to apply to Williams F1 and get a job there. So I spent over 5 years with them and ended up heading up the brand and graphic design team there before leaving and doing a bit of a career break and then going into Formula E with Mercedes-Benz and helping them for the last 2 years set up their Formula E team.
And you're very much working around sustainability as well, aren't you?
Yeah, so I left Mercedes in May last year and I've set up my own business now where I'm really trying to help brands build that positive impact, whether that be in sport, fitness or sustainability. So, and I just really love the kind of people that you come across, and it's been a real journey during the pandemic to start your own thing as well. So it's been great. It's been really exciting, although challenging.
I'll bet. Christiana, what about you?
So my background is completely different. So I graduated in engineering back in the days, quite a long time ago, in Bologna University. And I came to UK to do a master at Cranfield University in motorsport engineering. So I started up my career as a motorsport engineer in GT and then in Formula One, mainly with the FIA, developing their safety devices and checking for traction control. So completely different things. But then in 2012, I became a research consultant for the FIA Institute. That was the research arm of the FIA that was researching safety and sustainability. So we became very exposed to the sustainability, and what we want to do was more an economical, like economic point of view of sustainability, not really environmental driven, but still very early stage of why motorsport should be linked to sustainability. And then while I was consulting in 2012, I joined Williams F1 to develop the strategy for Williams Advanced Engineering. And that, I think, is when I did a big jump, because we started to introduce sustainability within Williams Advanced Engineering, thinking about electrification. Now we could make the technology work in other sectors like the NHS or other larger projects that were kind of more social and environmental connected at motorsport. And then I left Williams Advanced Engineering in 2015 after having led for a couple of years the development of the Formula E batteries for the generation 1 of Formula E battery. And I decided to go back to university to do a PhD. So I think engineering was important, but the PhD was actually on sustainability and business. And that's what I wanted to develop, this awareness of how business and sustainability fit with motorsport. And I set up my own company in 2018. And we advise for a number of stakeholders in the sport and in motorsport for their sustainability strategy and to build their vision of like a better sport and a better motorsport for the future.
So 3 really diverse areas of work, all within motorsport. I'd be interested to know from each of you, what does sustainability mean to you, both on a personal level, but also on a professional level as well? Christiana, where do you want to start with that?
So for me, I always do this kind of connection. It's like when I entered Formula One back in 2004, was when we developed loads about safety, and we were very conscious that was something really missing for motorsport, and the only way that we could connect motorsport to have a purpose for automotive was building the safety legacy with the automotive. And that was really a big journey, and was also a very step learning curve, I'd have to say. And it's the same things with sustainability. For me, sustainability, at least in the industry, is really important in the sense that is missing, and is something that we need to create to make sure that motorsport is purpose-driven and relevant for the future. So, and the sustainability is not just like the environmental sustainability, it's the social part of sustainability, and it's also the economical, like affordability, affordable motorsport that we need to build. So it's all 3 parts together.
Julie, you did a degree in sustainability, so presumably it was something you've been interested in for a while on a personal level before you got involved professionally.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I've been wanting to work in sustainability since I was probably kind of like even before I was 15. So I've been lucky to grow in an amazing kind of like, region where it kind of like it's a natural reserve area in France. So probably kind of like, I had that deep down inside. And really kind of like I sensed I was lucky to be part of this generation that was, seeing kind of like still studying the subprimes crisis, where really sustainability started to be a real topic in the economy, kind of like in the economy, and really seeing kind of like this wave of change quite radically and deep down in the societal level, but also very much kind of like at business and systemic level. So when I studied kind of like sustainability, I really thought that, beyond my personal interest, there was this opportunity to take it to the professional sphere. And actually my view of sustainability is actually echoing what Christiana mentioned. That's environmental protection, social inclusivity, and economic prosperity. And sustainability is this holistic approach that really makes that what we are doing today is to make sure that everyone has a decent living and the same type of conditions tomorrow.
I can see you nodding your head there, Sam. Presumably that's echoing some of your thoughts. Where did your interest in the topic come from? Because again, it's not necessarily, people wouldn't necessarily sort of design and social media, which is a lot of what you do, campaigning with sustainability, would they? So where did that come from? Was it in your personal life, or did it develop in your professional life?
I think it's come from my experience at Williams, really, to begin with. So Williams obviously has their advanced engineering division, and being a part of that company, I had so much visibility as to the different projects that they were working on. And there was a lot of crossover, really. And a lot of the sponsors that we had at Williams also had a sustainability kind of message that they wanted to convey, especially partners like Unilever. We did a lot of projects with them. So it's really interesting to have that insight and that background. And that's one of the amazing things that sponsors bring to teams, is this additional insight that you don't necessarily have. So I guess from there, it triggered this, I guess, interest in the subject. And then on a personal level, I was becoming more and more conscious of my buying habits. What was I purchasing? You know, how was I going about things? And then that kind of transitioned into my professional life. And now for me, sustainability, very much like what Christiana and Julia have said, is really trying to make things circular, because what happens is we tend to have one period of time with that product that you've bought, and we don't really see what happens at the beginning, what happens at the end, and they're both equally as important to the product. And even though my main role is to be creative, those materials have a huge impact as to what I might do with that.
Julia, your championship Formula E, obviously it's all about sustainability. It came about as a result of promoting that message. How important is it that all the different areas of every aspect of motorsport, so from from the team bosses at the top to the people in the catering department to the marketing teams, how important is it that they're kind of all working together, all singing from the same hymn sheet in order to progress the topic?
I really like your expression. I think it's very much the point, and what I'm really proud of is that we've not created the sustainability strategy that everyone is buying into. We created a sustainability culture, and that's much stronger than anything else, because really, I mean, anyone kind of like in the departments, in the teams, from kind of like the CEO to kind of like, you know, the coordinator or even the interns, they come in and they want to, take part in the sustainability journey, which is amazing, because I mean, although I'm a sustainability professional, I'm not kind of like, an expert in kind of like in everything. This is impossible. So the amazing thing is that I learn as much as they learn with us, in the sense that we sit down, around the table and we're like, okay, so what do we do? What is it that you want to progress in your area of expertise, so that we can support you with our sustainability knowledge, but ultimately you're going to be running with it. And this is very much about you also, building your part of the step and the culture around sustainability in the championship.
Let's go on to some of the questions from our audience members. I don't have names for everybody who's sent them in advance, so apologies if I don't give you a name check, but whoever this is from, it's a good question. Let's put this one, should we go to Christiana first of all, and then we'll spread it around between you. What are the main sustainability challenges that the sport faces besides car design and races? What do you think, Christiana?
The sport as motorsport, that sentence means,
yeah, the main challenges that the sport as a whole faces, outside of the car design and races.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a cultural shift for the sport and motorsport. So as Julia was saying, this is a journey that we have to bring people together, and we really never had a journey to shift the behavior of people or the perception of people. And that is the main challenges for me, is like, and every other thing, from the car design to how the event is run, or how we were going to print the material that we're giving out, or communicating, that is all part of that cultural shift that need to happen to make sure that motorsport is sustainable. So that will be biggest challenge. Changing in behavior is the biggest challenge, and especially infants' behavior. So.
What were the biggest challenges, Julia, that Formula E came across when it first came about? Because obviously they were doing everything in a very different way to what would be sort of the traditional way of motorsport. Obviously a lot of that in the technology, but I know that's not your side. Tell us about the operational side of things.
Well, I think that we had a lot of skepticism on the authenticity of sustainability for the championship, and that's been kind of like a huge part of my work. Obviously, Formula E being kind of like an electric car racing championship had that, let's say, inherent sustainability DNA, but we needed to add substance to kind of like that kind of like image of sustainability and make sure that everything that we did, which is basically delivering most of motorsport events, was aligning kind of like 360 on the sustainability kind of like mindset and product. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge, but also kind of like the most amazing opportunity at the same time, because we had, let's say kind of like at the beginning, maybe not 12, but to make it simple, we had 12 events per year or per season, which needed to be kind of like thinking sustainability from start to the end. And again, taking back the life cycle thinking and approach that Samantha mentioned in the design perspective, that's exactly the same from the event perspective. How do we make sure that we transport all the material that is needed kind of like, in the most efficient way, trying to reduce the number of trucks that you need? How do you make sure that the material that you use to set up the booth, at the time we had kind of like fan zone and so on, are going to be kind of like sustainable, recyclable, reusable, and so on. And there is kind of like a million of other things that come into your consideration. And most importantly, at the same time, how do you make sure that the local community is positively impacted? How do you make sure that your partners and sponsors can make the most of all the value that you create around this event on sustainability and can enhance and support the message?
Sam, I guess that the biggest challenge that you've had is actually communicating that message. And how much of a challenge has that been? Because as I say, traditionally motorsport has been thought of as totally the opposite end of the scale, where where environmental concerns are come into play.
Mm-hmm. It's making sure, I think for me, it's making sure that everything you communicate around your brand, every touch point has a sustainable element to it, and then it makes it really easy to communicate. So for example, if you're designing packaging for some merchandise, or whether it's team kit or your hospitality ticket boxes, for example, if you're using the right materials and you're producing beautiful design that ultimately reflects your brand really, really well, you've got some great stories, and that just creates this really lovely narrative that then you can just flow through everything. You don't really want to almost publicize it too much, because you don't want to force it down people's throats, because obviously you want them to enjoy the races and things like that. But actually having all these lovely stories, especially with the partnerships that you have as well, that's ultimately these really lovely narratives that flow through.
I know a lot of people who are engaged with the community kind of have an aim and a desire to work in motorsport, to have a career in motorsport. What can you tell us, all of you again, about the opportunities that the push for sustainability that we're currently seeing is likely to bring for them? I guess particularly for women as well, because I think environment and sustainability, statistics would suggest it's an area that women are even more concerned about than men to a certain extent. Julia, what advice could you give people?
I think, it's especially for women, indeed, it's very interesting, because there's indeed probably kind of like a sort of natural incline in sustainability for ladies, which is amazing. And I think that any business, especially in motorsport, needs that kind of like a women touch and kind of like feminine kind of like way of seeing and feeling the things. And I think it's something that you should really make a strength, and really kind of like not be ashamed of being a woman in the room discussing with men and bringing on like the sustainability topic. It's very much often about the values. Sustainability has obviously a very strong link with values, and this is something that's kind of like in a business environment or a motorsport environment, no one can really question. So it's very important to make your point and stand still about that, because ultimately sustainability is also very much about managing risk, and you're managing the risk for your top management on this super important topic. So I think and sometimes it's difficult, but you should be you should not be afraid to make your point and think in a different way, because sustainability is business as unusual. So that's your role, actually, to do that.
What about on the engineering side of things, Christiana? Because there's so much going on in that sphere in terms of materials and the technology that are used, isn't there?
There are, I think, actually the sustainability angle is bringing a lot of new profession to the motorsport that I think is amazing, especially for new people that want to enter the sport from a different angle. From the engineering side, of course, we always had a lot of engineers in motorsport, but there will be quite a lot of technology that need to be developed in terms of energy, efficiency, materials. There is lots of research about materials and how to make the whole, like the holistic, the whole kind of team, paddock, transportation, and and headquarter, everything sustainable. But I think there are also lots of other roles that are coming about that we didn't consider before. There is a lot of roles for data analysis and mathematician for models, because we need models to actually calculate the carbon footprint or make the models of what we want to calculate. And there is also lots of other roles in environmental management system, for example, that younger, I would say, youngest person that have done sustainability and environmental management course could actually come and take ownership of. So I actually see sustainability as a really big opportunity for the youngest generation. These courses were not available when I was at university at all. It's either engineering, law, economics, doctor. It was the boring kind of scales of things. And you could take some of the courses. Like for example, I took like some material and resource courses in my engineering degree, but were not really on sustainability, because it was about the scarcity of resource and mining and things like that, but was not really direct on that. So now there are lots of courses available, and there is a really wide spectrum. And this course, they can all feed into motorsport. We need younger people. We need people that have got that background. So it's like they're more than welcome. And I'm sure, although it's very a traditional environment, the environment is changing. So there would be more, these people will be welcomed.
What about in your space, Samantha? Does it make a difference? Does it bring in new opportunities for people?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, for someone being creative like myself, you know, creativity is first. I want to create the best visual product, but actually I need to rely on people like Julia and Christiana to advise me as to, you know, which one is the most sustainable. If that's what we're really pushing, you know, do I go with a canvas bag or do I go with a paper bag? You know, there's lots of data out there to suggest that one is worse than the other, and actually canvas bags are not as sustainable as you would think they are, just because of the way that the cotton is grown and things like that. So there's a lot of data and a lot of information that's still got a lot of murky water to it, so you don't really know what it is. And like both of the ladies have said, you're just always learning all the time, and those kinds of decisions and that kind of information massively impacts on what kind of visual output that I might do. It won't lead the creative choice, but it will have an impact onto the material that I might use.
Well, on the topic of which is most sustainable, that leads me on to a question that we've had in from Jessica. Jessica wants to know which championships or organisations, apart from Formula E and Extreme, seem to be the early adopters to sustainability from top to bottom. Who wants to lead on that one? I mean, Julia, maybe you're best placed to give us your insight on that one, because obviously you're in Formula E, but as a result of that, you've probably been looking at what other championships are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to comment. I mean, certainly WRC, so the rally championship, has been doing and really been putting a lot of efforts and again, I think a lot of love into the sustainability topic since a long time. And certainly they've been kind of like at the forefront of that since many years. And I think that all in all, I mean, you see also F1 that has developed their own sustainability strategy a couple of years ago now. You see basically more or less kind of like all the different championships starting to, pioneer on their own journey towards sustainability, which is amazing. I think it's very important because we need all the motorsport championship to really kind of like row in the same direction, because I'm used to say that ultimately the enemy and the competition is not between us on the sustainability side. The competition is against climate change or kind of like social inequalities and so on, that we really need all together to work as a team to make sure that we're going to fight that and be effective in this.
There must be a certain amount of pride, though, from the fact that you were kind of leading the charge in Formula E.
It is, but at the same time, we had the chance of coming as the new kid on the block with completely new rules. And indeed, correct, there was skepticism around what we were doing, but at the same time, we were really free from kind of like, I literally started my sustainability strategy for Formula E with a blank page. No one kind of like was imposing anything on me, and I did exactly what I thought what was the best. I probably did some mistakes at some point, but kind of like my journey kind of like, was the one that I believe was the best for the championship. So I'm certainly very proud of what we did, but I'm conscious that it takes more time to culturally readjust when you're an existing entity that has been there kind of like, for tens of years.
No, it's a very, very valid point. What's your experience, Christiana? Which championships and organisations have you seen kind of being early adapters and adopters of sustainability?
So I can just only echo what Julia said about the early adapters, like for obviously Formula E and Extreme ERs and the championship are all kind of trying to catch up, and WRC has always been, although like they've got biggest problem because where they race, the environment in which they race, so it's very difficult for them to be 100% sustainable. So and as Julia said, Formula One has done this strategy, but I think also we need to watch for our neighbors, like for example, the FIM, the Federation of Motorbikes. They've been always at the forefront with their sustainability agenda, and they've done quite a lot of things, possibly 10 years earlier than we have done. But FIM FIA, at the moment, FIA as well has got a great strategy that they have launched last year. We have got an FIA Environmental and Sustainability Commission that I actually represent Motorsport UK in that commission, that we are 22 experts from all the other ASN that are discussing about sustainability and trying to advise the championship and trying to advise the stakeholder how to be more sustainable. So you can see that there is a big push to make sustainability on the whole range of championship and not to just let the championship well, we obviously know that Formula E is done really well on their own, but it's like I think FIA is kind of feel like they need to be a push to trying to equalize all the others, at least to a certain level. So so I would say, and then we see as well other championships that are sustainable as itself, in the sense like I don't know, I could mention sailing that done a great, amazing work. But as well, like a micromobility championship like e-scooter, they are sustainable because it's a sustainable form of transport. So it's easier in a way, as it's been easier for an electric car like Formula E to be sustainable. So I would say it's very difficult to say what is most sustainable. Everybody is doing effort in different direction because sustainability is these three pillars. And I think all the direction need to be equally accepted. Sustainability is not black and white, it's a journey. And as long as you are in that journey, it's good.
Couple more career-related questions. So one that came in advance, for people who are looking at a career in this area, is sustainability experience more important than motorsport experience? Samantha, what's your view there?
In a design-related role, I would say it's all about design. So that doesn't mean that you have to have worked for a motorsport team in the past. I think if you've got experience either with your own portfolio, with work that you've been doing yourself, or you've been working for a design or brand agency, I think that's enough to really get you into the door, into an entry level or even to a mid-level role. And then as you progress higher up the ranks, having a motorsport background is really useful, but it's not necessarily essential. It depends on who you're working for. If you're working for a team, it's not necessarily essential, but if you're working for a rights holder like Formula E or Formula One, then actually maybe having a more entertainment background is actually what you need, because that's what you're really trying to push for all the fans.
What about in Formula E, Julia? You're obviously all about the championships, all about sustainability. So is it really important for somebody who might want to work in this series to have that experience, more important to have the sustainability experience than the motorsport experience?
I think, I mean, both would be really appreciated, and it very much depends which role you want to apply for. Certainly, kind of like in my team, when I look for kind of like, you know, a new member, sustainability kind of like experience, expertise, training is essential. But I think to work in the championship, we have a lot of people that don't have necessarily sustainability expertise, but just a strong kind of like a strong feel for it. And actually discussing with HR, kind of like, I think more than 90% of the interviews, people are attracted by the championship because they are fascinated by the sustainability ethos and mission of the championship, which really drives them to feel that, you know, they're going to do something meaningful, even if they work, you know, in design, branding, marketing, communication, operations, and so on. There's kind of like this really strong feel for it.
And I guess, Christiana, where engineering is concerned, that's got to be the bedrock for everything, hasn't it? It's the engineering experience that's vital.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's an engineering experience. But if I take the example of my company, for example, so we've kind of grown exponentially in the last past times. And I have to say, what we were looking for is, of course, some sustainability experience. But I think for us, it's been a small company in motorsport, talking with lots of motorsport championship and the stakeholder of motorsport, is more like the drive for that people, why they want to work, you know, like why they want to work in sustainability and in motorsport. So not necessary experience and not necessary like all the ducks in a row that they know everything, but they're willing of be there do a significant change. I think that is I always say, like it doesn't really matter which degree you have, as long as you're willing to learn and you're willing to do, and that's at least for an entry level. I know that is very different if you go for a managerial role or any other role, but I think for someone that is at university is thinking what to do, is kind of like experience in motorsport is I don't know, at my time, it was not too difficult to have. It's like going to a team and trying to budget team in the pit lane to ask them, especially the small one, ask them, can I do your data analysis? Can you check your data? So, in that way, it's like for engineering, it's quite easy. For sustainability, it could be still difficult because it's not so well developed in the grassroots motorsport. But definitely, like, I don't know, Motorsport UK is dealing with sustainability, will be dealing with sustainability as well. So they, you know, like trying to enter into the ASN, maybe to trying to do a bit of experience. It's just, I think the main things will be the drive that one person have got to make a real change. And then it's like you can adjust the tune of what you're looking for. With engineering, it's a bit more difficult. Unless you got an engineering degree, it's very difficult to be an engineer. But I think with sustainability, you can learn. But I had to go back to university, so you'll have to have a bit of understanding of the program, and you also have to have some really good work colleagues that you work together with, that they explain you the things that you cannot understand, so they're willing to learn. Also, when you are my age, that you don't necessarily know everything is so vast, sustainability, you cannot know everything.
Well, in fact, a very specific question, and Christiane, I guess you're best placed to answer this one because it's about engineering. Jessica says, I did my master's in motorsports engineering back in 2008. Sustainability wasn't an official course, aside from the advantages of 3D printing. Are there modules now available inside bachelor's and or master's programs in the education space now?
So there are modules available in masters at the moment. Actually, there are master on sustainability itself, and there are actually master online on sustainability. I know that Imperial College have got some, and I know that there are some motorsport courses that are putting sustainability in it. For example, I sit on the advisory board of Cranfield University, the motorsport degree, and we just had like a session on sustainability in motorsport, for example, and that I think will become more frequent. For example, we have a similar session and the MBA in Bologna. So I think that is what university want to have. I think Julia as well has got some example of that, because I know she's collaborating with some university, or she, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, quite broad, but for example, there's kind of like a FIFA Masters that do deliver kind of like sustainability sessions. There's in Switzerland IESTS, that is basically EPFL, specialized kind of like a sports management course that has at least two-day session sustainability training for their students and so on. So there's a lot and more kind of like sustainability content that is either part of kind of like your training as, I don't know, an engineer, or kind of like a more commercial kind of like a type of role, and you would have kind of like access to a couple of days, or if not, there are kind of like some dedicated sustainability trainings for kind of like students or professionals that want to have kind of like a bit of a taster in their career.
You've kind of just touched a little bit already on the next question, which comes from Polly, which is, how would you say is the best way to get into environmental management within motorsport? Anything to add there, Julia?
So, I mean, I'm not sure what, because environmental management can mean two different things in sustainability. Either it's about really kind of like trying to minimize the impact on the planet, to say it in a very generic way, or environmental management is environmental management systems, where you basically put in place kind of like a framework that is a system and so on. So I'm going to try and cater for both kind of like angles to make sure that you have your answer. So environmental management, I mean, for me, it's we are going back to the first thing, which is there are some basics that you need to learn, I mean, and study, because environmental, I mean, protection, in a way, if I take it like that, environmental protection is basically thinking about the impact that you would have. The classic things are transport, waste, energy, water, and so on. These, you kind of like, you train yourself, and then you would understand and apply that onto kind of like an entity level, whichever entity you work on. When it comes to environmental management systems, which is kind of like the systemic approach of how you minimize at the level of an organization the environmental impact, this one requires kind of like a more specific and niche knowledge, because the systems are basically kind of like normally coming from existing standards. So this is that's where we enter the jargony part of sustainability, which is not nice and not accessible. But I mean, this is also part of this. So it's also good that you're aware of that. And so standards are basically kind of like, you know, frameworks that are designed to make sure that there's kind of like a minimum level of implementation that is across the board, the industry, whichever industry you're looking at. And this is more niche, more specific, and requires really specific skills.
Every industry has its jargon. Another question that came through to us in advance, and Samantha, maybe I'll ask you to answer this one first of all. Apart from the obvious electric powertrain, what steps are typically taken in motorsports to improve sustainability? So what have you seen within your area?
Well, I mean, definitely whenever I've been at the factories, there's lots going on there, you know, even down to, you know, switching electricity suppliers. So it's really running all the way through. In terms of my role, I kind of work very closely with the suppliers that I work with, and I'm always kind of questioning and pushing them as much as possible, you know, where, you know, even if it's papers, for example, you know, pushing them where, you know, is this an FSC paper, which is basically an environmental, or it's managed in a way that makes the farming of papers sustainable, essentially. And, you know, are they those, or are they recycled? How many times can I potentially recycle that paper? You know, I was working with a supplier the other day, and I was talking to them about ribbon, for example, and this particular ribbon could be recycled 7 times, which is something that I didn't know previously. So always kind of pushing those limits, really, and working with as many people as possible just to get that information in there, and then hopefully facilitate it for the client, really.
And you must see it across a really broad range, because you've got different clients in different sectors, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so at the moment I've got a client in sustainable investments, and I'm also helping basically a company that sells historic Formula 1 cars as well. So they actually repair them, maintain them, and give them a new lease of life as well. So it's a really broad spectrum. So they've all got their different needs, and I've definitely seen a lot more go digital, especially obviously with the pandemic. Everything's been moving that way, and even for myself, with the experience that I've got, I've still had to level up and upskill myself during the pandemic as well, and learn new things. And actually that's been great, and it's been pushing me creatively, and then I'm then pushing the projects creatively for my clients as well.
Julia, what steps have you seen come into place through Formula E in terms of improving sustainability? And maybe what steps have you seen go outside Formula E as well?
Well, I mean, it's been an amazing journey. When I think of when we started and where we are now, I mean, as I said, we started very much focusing on the environmental impact. This is also because that was expected of us initially. You know, you think electric cars, you think about saving the planet, not necessarily saving the people on the planet. So, you know, putting in place waste management on all our events, it seems basic, but it's very difficult. So putting in place waste management on all our events, phasing out of single-use plastic, making sure that we were offering vegetarian options, making sure that the way we fly around the world is as efficient as possible, because I mean, ultimately the truth is that most of the impact in the championship are due to the way we transport goods and people and so on. So we've done a lot of work on this, which has been amazing, because again, you keep learning, and I very much echo what Samantha was saying. This is very much kind of like each time you learn and you discover new things. And then we started growing the scope and really integrate the social aspects of sustainability. So how we work with communities, how we make sure that we leave something kind of like behind, you know, like a proper legacy after our events, how we make them feel part of our event, how do we make sure that they will benefit from our event as a local business, local schools, local university student that would be basically, I mean, having speeches being delivered by race engineers or by team principals. How do we make sure that these people understand what is really kind of like electric mobility behind, you know, the cars that go around the track and so on. So now we're reaching kind of like the next phase of the journey, which is how do we work with our partners and our teams to align their sustainability strategies on ours, which means concretely, how do we make sure that we create together kind of like project that will have an impact, a bigger and wider impact together. So we're discussing about, I mean, I can give kind of like a couple of examples. We're looking into leaving some, I mean, amazing murals in the cities that we race in that are made of a very specific type of paint that eats the air pollution. So that would be a typical legacy that we do in partnership with teams or partners, because this is, you know, something that is very visible. So that's good for the brands, but that is something that is like intrinsically good for people and like the environment in these host cities.
That travel aspect is really tricky, isn't it? I mean, every time you see somebody like Lewis Hamilton, who, you know, tries very hard to live a sustainable life as possible, post a message or, you know, communicate something about sustainability, he just gets a barrage of, yeah, but you're on a plane, you know. Yeah. How do we counter that travel aspect?
Well, it's actually very interesting, because the travel industry is kind of like I think going through a very interesting phase, which is quite pivotal. At the moment, they are just kind of like starting to test some innovation. So hydrogen planes, electric planes, biofuel to power the planes and so on. But they're a bit kind of like, I think motorsport and sports were already a bit late in terms of the sustainability journey, but these guys are the next level in terms of being late. So we are very much kind of like pushing them hard in kind of like adopting more sustainable measures, and we're getting there. The big players in kind of like transport and freight field are getting there, but it's that's where also it's fantastic to work in motorsport, because we are such at the interface of so many industries that then it's really becoming kind of like, as I was saying, kind of like we're all rowing in the same direction. And if we need to have kind of like a more sustainable way of transporting or freight, basically all cars around the world for the racing, it means that our logistic partner needs to find a way to power the planes in a more sustainable way. This is not our expertise, but we are kind of like hand in hand in this, because if DHL, I mean, that's our logistic partner, if they are kind of like doing it with us, then they will be able to offer this more sustainable service to other clients. So it's kind of like, it's all a trickle down of like positive and kind of like a positive change, but also good business for them. So everyone is winning ultimately.
And I guess that's where people like you, Christiana, really come in, because as engineers, you're developing the technology that we can then, as motorsport, send out to the rest of the world, as is, has been traditionally been the way. That's something that motorsport has always provided itself on, hasn't it? Being at the forefront of technology, new technology.
Yeah, I think motorsport is a great place to be R&D lab for any technology, as well the one related to climate change. I think it's like we can do an amazing job if we put our thinking head on and just go out and try to solve this problem, because that is all what motorsport is. You have got a challenge that is either is winning the race, either is going to faster or whatever, and then lots of engineers get together to solve the challenges. So it's kind of like the same trick, so just different kind of environment. But I think the greatest things I've seen in the last year is actually the development of sustainable technologies. And there is this, what Julia was saying is completely for the aviation, is the same things for material industry. The material is advanced in a way that you wouldn't say before. It's like I was talking with someone before about resins for carbon fiber that is made by tomato skins. So it's like you got at the moment you got sustainable fiber as well that is not carbon fiber, is made of grass. So it's kind of like you got this massive evolution of materials that is amazing how fast they're going. And there is lots of universities that are researching as well. So it's not just the industry, it's universities that are investing time and people on these kind of things, and they will all feed eventually to motorsport, that will test them out to then feed to automotive or to aviation. So it's this great space that we are all. The other great technology obviously is hydrogen that motorsport is trying to push as well. So there will be a category for hydrogen in WEC, in Le Mans 24 hours. So it's kind of like the same way that in 2012 motorsport has pushed the technology of electric cars. Now it's trying to develop and push the technology behind the hydrogen, and trying to continue that legacy, kind of being R&D lab for any technology out there. So I think in that way, it's kind of an amazing job what motorsport is doing. And it's very sad sometimes to see all the negative comments for when Lewis Hamilton writes something, or when Formula E does a really great job and someone wrote a negative comment, because I think people don't understand how difficult has been to implement these things and this journey, because motorsport has not born to be sustainable, and people traditionally repeat things that they do normally and they don't change after 50 years of motorsport. So I think it's like a very diminished effort that everybody is trying to bring motorsport to the right path.
Too much negativity around in this world, isn't there? Another question that was sent in to us earlier on: do you see the balance between sustainability and requirements like budget and practicality as an evolving challenge? And obviously, Christiana, you were just talking about the challenges that we face at the moment. What's your view on that?
Well, I think sustainability as well is economical affordability. That is part of budget cap. So I don't see actually as a stop at it. I actually see as doing things more efficient. That is what sustainability is efficiency and efficacy as well. So it's kind of like, I think that kind of things will, like budget cap, for example, or practicality. Practicality is always a bit of inverted commas. Is like what you mean about practicality, because what is practical for me couldn't be practical for you, for example. So it's kind of like I would leave that there. But having a budget cap, I think will actually trying to force things to be sustainable and efficient, rather than force to just things to be done as quicker as possible, less efficient than possible. So I think will be actually be a trigger. And because like I think the economic aspect of sustainability is also important one that again is part of the sustainability ethos and in how things should get done anyway.
Samantha, I guess some of the things you've already talked about, actually we're going to save people's budgets because we're talking about reusing things as opposed to everything being brand new?
It's kind of a bit of a mix, I think. So if you're making something, traditionally, depending on what material you use, actually some sustainable materials are actually slightly more expensive. So then it prices, for example, the smaller teams with the smaller budgets out of using those. And depending on the team will depend on the volume and how many of they will order of such items. So that will have a huge consequence on prices as well. So budget is still a really big thing, but the more people kind of use more sustainable products and things like that, the more it will drive the price down, and actually it will make it so much more accessible. I mean, a simple example would be looking at clothing, for example. You know, when you look at recycled and sustainable clothing, it tends to be significantly higher than something from your normal kind of retail shops. It would be very similar to that, but for teams as well. So there is definitely kind of that challenge as well, and it also depends on whether your team really wants to have that sustainability shift. Maybe that's not the thing that they want to champion. Obviously we're all hopefully moving in that direction, and there will be an element that they have to do, but you know, some teams will do more than others, and you need champions in lots of different areas anyway.
And Julia, within Formula E, how do the teams and the manufacturers that are entered into the championship, how much was budget a sort of, you know, a practical consideration for them?
Oh, I mean, this is clearly very important, but I mean, I was reflecting on what both Christian and Sam were saying, and I think that's I mean, sustainability also brings intrinsic value. I mean, sustainability is kind of like is something that a brand takes years to build in terms of reputation, and that's kind of like, you know, one kind of like wrong move can destroy it in just a couple of seconds. So I mean, brands can invest kind of like a lot of money into sustainability, not to throw money kind of like out of the windows, but basically because this kind of like this is intrinsic value. And again, kind of like, I'm sorry to be a bit technical, but there's a big trend at the moment that is called ESG, so environmental, social, and governance. This is basically under the umbrella of sustainable investment, where you see all the banks moving to basically financing only companies that have a proven track record of sustainability certifications, which means that, you know, on kind of like, I would say sooner rather than later, all of us as kind of like businesses and teams, partners, manufacturers will have to showcase that we have kind of like external recognitions that our sustainability approach is sound and solid. So it's worth investing today to ensure that tomorrow the revenues are still accessible.
It's become very important to teams, hasn't it, to demonstrate their credentials where sustainability is concerned. You know, with the FIA now has an official accreditation for it.
Absolutely. And actually, this is one of the things that I think FIA kind of like did so well and ahead of the time. They developed the accreditation many, many years ago. And for example, I started my sustainability strategy for Formula E with this accreditation to start kind of like lay down the foundations. And this is an amazing tool for all motorsport stakeholders because this is quite versatile. You can use it whether you're a team or a championship or kind of like a body that I would always recommend to use. And for anyone interested to have a look at it, it's very well developed.
So that gives them the target that they're aiming for, which leads into another question that we had coming in. And again, this is one for you really, Julia. At this point, what percentage of all that Formula E means is sustainable? Is it possible to put a figure on it?
I mean, in the grand scheme of kind of like the Formula E means, I can't tell you, to be honest. Like I don't know out of the rest of the budget of the company, but I can say it's substantial. And when I say substantial, it's really kind of like we're talking millions. So it's a lot of money for a company that is relatively small.
Sorry, I think the question was more relating to the championship as a whole. How much of what you do kind of take the sustainability box as a percentage versus the bits that, you know, we've already touched on, maybe that the travel isn't as sustainable as you would like it to be.
Yeah, so I think I mean I'm trying to assess kind of like on the journey. Obviously, kind of like you always want to keep pushing on the journey. I mean, we are getting to a point where I mean, we are covering probably most of the environmental challenges. We are well advanced on most of the social challenges, and we are kind of like really starting to develop and more mature on the kind of like on the side with kind of like teams and partners and so on. So I'd say that kind of like we've done a bit more than halfway of the journey, and we still need a couple of years to get where kind of like our ambition and our vision is exactly, which is exciting.
Yeah, a long way down the road, but an exciting path ahead, like you say.
Yeah.
We've had a question come in from Romy. Next to what you've seen happen in your championships, what do you think of sustainability for what do you think in terms of sustainability for the future of motorsport? What are things that you would want to see improve? Samantha, maybe you'd like to kick off with that one.
I think merchandise is quite a big thing that I'd like to see improve. Just because, you know, do you have a capsule collection? What is the right way to order garments? At the moment, the process is you bulk order before the season because of how long the product takes to manufacture. So then you've committed to X amount of units, and that could be huge, and that stock could be left over at the end for your team to have to sort out, or the championship to sort out. But also what happened to that garment once you take it home, you know, especially if it's one that has logos on, it will, you know, it won't be, I guess, up to date within a year. So what happens to that? Is there a way of removing the logos and applying new logos for the next season? What happens to those? Unless you're going to keep it as a collector's item forever, it will become dated. And I know other sports have the same issue. So for example, that would be the same in football or rugby, but that will be a really big challenge to tackle and work out really what happens there. So that will be quite interesting to see how that develops.
Christiana, what do you think for the engineering side of things?
So for me, it's actually quite a strange one, is the energy that we use when we are at the track. So in all the events, we use energy for like lights or paddocks or charging or the floodlights. I think for me the big challenge and what I would like to see sorted in 10 years time is like not having generators but just having some kind of attachment to the grid, and the grid has got green energy, or if you're not able to go in the grid because you are rallies, then they got some solution that they can port with them, that they can create energy from solar panel. Like for example, the bivouac of the Dakar was powered this year. So I think that will remove quite a significant amount, and also will give the perception of transformation, because it is more tangible to understand for some of the older stakeholders, I think.
And what's top of your wish list, Julia?
I think, I mean, there's a lot of kind of like topics on my wish list. I mentioned the issues in relation to transport. This is a big thing, but I think also kind of like if we look at kind of like the more social side of the story, diversity and inclusion is something that I think very much we can improve in motorsport, especially if you look, and that's why kind of like Girls on Track is such an amazing platform, especially if you look at kind of like you know, I mean. The stereotype probably of people that are used to work in motorsport versus kind of like the rest of the society, and the number of people that are passionate and interested in kind of like potentially having a career on motorsport. And we often look at the drivers. Certainly kind of like becoming a racing driver is first of all something extremely expensive, so not a lot of people are able to, but actually there are kind of like many other roles where there are some barriers to entries that we need to make sure we're going to break, because I mean it just takes a bright brain and a lot of will and passion to get there.
We have just a couple of minutes left. So one final question to each of you, and this comes from Shano, who says amazing developments and insights shared. 10 years ago, sustainability was pushed to the side. Where do we see ourselves in 5 years' time in motorsports?
Can I
start with that one?
Front and center. That's where and that's where we are getting in less than 10 years.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the question is not where we will be in 5 years, but how fast can we go? Like, doesn't have necessarily to be 5 years, could be 2 years. I think we got the critical mass now, and we got the interest. It's just like how fast can we go, and how many more resources we can find to join us in this journey. That is the challenge, I think.
What do you think, Samantha?
I completely agree. I completely agree. And I think actually sustainability and the pandemic advancing quite a lot of all the tech that's going on, I think it will raise a lot of questions as how do we make motorsport even more accessible for fans, you know, with all this technology moving forward. Do we do, you know, localized hubs in different cities, you know, so you don't actually have to travel to Rome, for example, to the E-Prix? Could you meet somewhere in London and have almost like a small kind of like festival vibe going on with VR headsets, for example? You know, it opens up all these other options to you.
I'm on for that. I like the sound of that very much. It's been fascinating hearing from you all. Some really interesting insights. So thank you to all of you, to Christiana, to Julia, and to Samantha for your time, and as I say, for sharing those insights with us. Thank you to everybody who's joined us as well. And also, obviously, thanks to the FIA Girls on Track UK and to Motorsport UK for setting up the event. Don't forget, you can rewatch it. It will be posted on the community Facebook page at some point in the near future. And that's also the place to look out for details of next month's special webinar as well. So for the moment, no, that's all from me. Thank you very much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.